Thank you for joining us today on this very interesting conversation that we're going to have on social media and how it can really rear its ugly head. Last week we saw some unusual things that were happening with social media, and in fact probably the most active social media week that we have had in a variety of fronts. Before we start, I'd like to give a special welcome to our friends joining us today from Hawaii and Singapore and Australia who have gotten up so early, and our friends in Europe that are staying up late for this broadcast. And I'd like to now turn this over to Karen Mazzullo, who will go ahead with the webinar. Karen, go ahead.
Thank you, as always. And folks on the call, thank you for attending. That's our moderator, Bill Baker. Bill Baker is our Vice President of Operations for Firestorm, and we love him. For those of you following along on Twitter, speaking of social media, the hashtag for this session is hashtag FSCrisis. I will not be able to respond to you during the session, but certainly we'll check that hashtag afterward. If there are any lingering questions or comments, I'll be happy to respond. On Facebook, you can follow us on our Facebook page at Firestorm Solutions. And if you'd like a presentation of this or a like webinar customized for your organization, your culture, and your people, just give us a contact, give us a yell via our website at firestorm.com. And a recording of the live session will be provided. Generally, we have those ready about an hour after the session. It'll be on the front page of our website and also under the newscast tab on our website as well. Firestorm transforms crisis into value, and we love doing it. Our leadership supports your management, your organization before, during, and after a crisis. Crises take many forms, and they have long memories. And we want to help empower your people to manage risk and crisis. Also, any work product provided by Firestorm must be read in conjunction with all guidance given by national, regional, and local authorities, as well as your company's personal counsel. The information given and comments made on this webinar should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. And that's me. I'm Karen. Hi. Thanks for joining us today. I am Firestorm's in-house social media advisor. I also serve on our expert council and work with clients specifically around social media strategy involving risks, monitoring, and mature use. And that is going to be the focus of our session today. We're going to be talking about social media risk, monitoring, and merged media, and just a really quick bit about really what is merged media and how we can manage it maturely. Talk a little bit about leaks, hacks, and internal sabotage that we've seen very recently. Real risks to people and property. Some information on what you can do today in your organization, no matter how large or how small. And then some strategies, recommendations, and questions for you. Excuse me, it's pollen season where I live, so you'll have to excuse me if I cough just a little bit. All right, let's start off. Social media risk, monitoring, and merged media. We're using the term merged media. I met a fascinating young man when I was at the International Crisis and Risk Conference in Florida recently. We were doing a panel tabletop exercise, and the term merged media is being used more and more. Stanley Pollitt and I were talking about crisis and merged media. And merged media really is the merging of traditional media with new media and digital media. And what are the boundaries of going from a very traditional, get up in the morning and read your newspaper, to sort of this new cowboy, 24 hours a day, millions of news desks of one environment that we're in? And how long will it be till this boomerang effect of being saturated with new information every second via social media will come back into some sort of a balance? So when I think of merged media, I think of that marriage of traditional and new media and working toward a balance. So I'm going to start off with a little story. Do any of you on the call know who Matt Keys is? Raise your hands. I can't see it, but I'll know you're out there. Matthew Keys is can be found at @thematthewkeys on Twitter. This is a screenshot from Matt's Facebook page. In 2012, he had about 7,600 followers. That number's gone up to about, I think, 25,000 now. And in 2012, Matt Keys was sort of a boy wonder of social media. Time magazine named him as one of the top 140 people to follow on Twitter, and the Huffington Post named Matt Keys as one of the 50 people to subscribe to for news on Facebook. Additionally, at that time, Reuters announced that they were hiring, and we really applauded Thomson Reuters. And I have to make a disclaimer here. I used to work for a Thomson company, and I love the Thomson companies. I think they're great companies. So I'm trying not to have any of my future comments be colored by that. But we really applauded Reuters in embracing new media and digital media and social media and how they were going to marry it into the existing newsroom. So they hired Matt Keys as the deputy social media editor. One of the key things they had defined about this role was that this person was going to play a key role in helping to train Reuters journalists on best practices in social media. Matt also had been nominated for an Online News Association award in his coverage of the tsunami and the nuclear disaster in Japan following the earthquake. And Matt, as a 26-year-old, was a recognized leader in helping journalists turn social media into valuable reporting tools, all great things. We want someone to come into our organization who understands how to responsibly use the tools to communicate. Later on in 2002, it was interesting. We saw some quotes from Matt, one of which I pulled out. He had stated that he was followed by some of the world's top-notch journalism organizations on various social media websites. So Matt has really high profile. And an interesting comment, and I think you'll see why in just a little bit, is Matt Keys agreed that while Twitter is an excellent way to get news, he dismissed the notion that it would ever become a police scanner. Oh, this will be related and make sense to you in a moment. There was a faux pas, a very public faux pas by Google. They made a rare high-profile fail when they appeared to jump the gun on their third quarter earnings release statement. When they released the statement, it was not ready for release, and at the top of the release, there was a placeholder that someone had put for Larry Page's, the CEO's comment. His quote was to be put into that. Because of that early release and the errors made by it, the stock plummeted as much as 9% immediately afterward. And internet jokesters seized on the word pending Larry quote that was in that release. Very quickly thereafter, a parody account on Twitter was created. It was called Pending Larry. And the first tweet was, oops, and it became a bit of a viral sensation, this parody account. We're going to jump to 2013, back to Matt Keys. Many of us have had to caution employees when they have done something, and we document it, and we document it well. And Reuters did not fail to do so as well. A final written warning was issued to Matt Keys for a number of reasons, one of which was he admitted to creating that parody Twitter account of Pending Larry, which created great embarrassment to Google. And while someone else may have done it, we might think it's humorous. We're talking about one of the major news and media outlets on the planet, not expecting one of their employees to act in a manner that was very unprofessional, at least in my opinion. Additionally, Reuters goes on to say they do not endorse or condone the use of parody accounts for social media efforts. They point to their social media policy. They point to their desire to have their journalists use social media in a way that's comfortable for them. However, when dealing with matters of public importance and actual or potential subjects of coverage, to be mindful of the impact that publicly expressed opinions can have on their work and the company. So we're talking about a major news organization, but I want you to be thinking about how this might impact your own organizations as well. So Thomson Reuters does a good job to give a warning to and caution. And it does point out that this series of actions displayed a serious lapse of judgment and professionalism. And we're back to the subject of maturity again. And it comes along with the fact that the Justice Department is charged at the time Reuters employee Matt Keyes with helping the hacking group Anonymous hack the Tribune company. These are allegations at this time. If you Google Matthew Keyes' name, you can find out a great deal more about the information in the story. Yesterday, Mr. Keyes appeared in court. He was charged with giving the hacking group Anonymous the login credentials to the computer system of the Tribune company, which owns the Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune, Baltimore Sun, and other media properties. In, I don't know, 2001, 2002, I wrote an article that one of the biggest risks that we know as companies we face is the loss of intellectual capital, specifically during a downsizing, restructuring, or termination or layoff of employees. Many companies do not have the deprovisioning, the creating the ability to very quickly cut off access to all of the very different databases and intellectual capital that we own to departing employees. And in this specific case, it's important, or not in this specific case, but in general, it's important that we remember we need to be having those conversations with our IT departments. How are we immediately deprovisioning employees? Do our employees have access to sensitive login information? How many do, and how can we monitor what's going on with that login information? Are we changing logins as quickly as possible? And for those of you who are directors of security on the call, reach out to me, because I'd love to know how you're working in with your organizations as we're faced with newer and more contemporary threats. But what's more important, I think, is to have a conversation with your employees. We're not talking about gee, a simple, and I know hack is a simple hack, but we're not talking about taking over somebody's Twitter account and posting about fast weight loss methods. We're talking about allegedly collaborating with one of the most notorious hacking groups, Anonymous, in the world, and coming along with that were maximum penalties of 10 years imprisonment, fines up to $250,000 or more. So we're not talking about just some little activity that happened. Additionally, during this period of time, Reuters suspended Mr. Keyes, as you might expect an organization would in this situation. Mr. Keyes continued he did not change on his official Twitter account or other Twitter accounts his title, his active employed title. As a matter of fact, he tweeted out that he was being paid not to work rather than being paid to work, but he was still working, or working in his mind. He was still tweeting out information as if it came directly from Reuters. And during this period of time, and everything we're going to talk about today is interconnected, we had the tragic events of last week. And during that time, Mr. Keyes tweeted out some information that was incorrect. And this just sort of added on to the pile of things. And when he was corrected by another professional reporter that the suspect was on the ground and at gunpoint, Mr. Keyes responded by saying, well, if I was in a real newsroom with access to my work email and instead of being shut out a month ago, I wouldn't be working out of my bedroom. So it's really all becoming about him, and he's still carrying the official brand of Thomson Reuters on his profile. More, he goes on then to actually have an argument in a very public forum with Anthony DeRosa, who is in essence his boss. So if you're going to make matters worse, I think, when you're being investigated for a federal crime and you violated your company's policy, why not go that one step further and just go ahead and have a public argument with your boss about something that really isn't about ownership at all? Mr. Keyes is saying that his boss plagiarized his tweet. And I don't know how you do that. I've given it a lot of thought, and I thought with retweets and resharing and rewording, does anybody own a tweet? Can you plagiarize someone else's tweet? Well, I suppose you can if you quote something really brilliant and it gets taken up or stolen. But there's a record. We know that we can always find the original source of something. But more important, I think, is this is just news that's being reported. Everybody's watching the same press conference. Everybody's watching the same information. And so we have to scratch our head and say, why is this going on? And then, just to make sure that as an employee, as I'm being suspended or leaving an organization, I'm going to go ahead and grant an interview with Columbia Journalism Review. And in that, if you request a PDF download of this presentation, once we're done, I've left all the hyperlinks to the different articles. You can read about all of the different information. And by the way, one of the things I want to point out here is that when Reuters suspended him, they did suspend him with pay, which, gee, I thought that was kind of nice. However, on April 22nd, he announced, again, via his Twitter account, that he just got off the phone, he had been fired, and he makes sure to add in that their union would be filing a grievance. So let's bring this to your house, your backyard, your company. How public a company are you? How profile are you? In that a situation may explode with an employee of your organization because there's a lack of maturity in managing the social media voice for your company. And I believe that's what this comes down to. I also immediately thereafter, and the young man's looking for a job, so I can appreciate that because Jose Canseco sort of jumped on the bandwagon. He retweeted and reshared some information from Mr. Canseco, who has a couple million followers, so that probably didn't hurt. But one of the other things I found very curious was that he shared a text message he received from someone allegedly with Anonymous, saying, give me all the info you have on Reuters, the employees, emails, everything. His response was one word, no, but I found it interesting that he not only thought to share this, but received it. During this period of time as well, we saw significant hacking and attacks from hackers coming out of Syria. Information Week security details in the wake of numerous high-profile Twitter account takeovers. Security experts continue to urge Twitter users to use complex, unique passwords for their social media sites, to change them often, to not use multiple different types of account on one device. So if you want to know, talk more about all of the different things that you can do to at least help improve somewhat the security. No, again, no matter what size your company is, please reach out to us. But there's also a real strong urge to Twitter to use two-factor authentication for account access, such as Apple and Dropbox have done. Let's talk a little bit about Anonymous and the Syrian Electronic Army. In the past, in just this very short period of time, let's say over this month, we've seen that they've hacked and seized control of multiple CBS Twitter accounts. And those messages weren't just statements or other messages designed to disrupt the business, but also redirected to malicious websites that launch drive-by attacks at browsers and other really harmful infections. Now, Twitter did suspend the accounts and suspended the hacker group's own Twitter feed, Anonymous. But this also followed seizures of both 60 Minutes, a Denver CBS affiliate, and the group also claimed credit for taking over the National Public Radio Twitter feed earlier. And then there was yesterday. Yesterday we saw the AP Twitter account hacked. We saw information posted that there were 2 explosions in the White House and that Barack Obama had been injured. And it was an exceptionally frightening thing to see. Anything that comes over Reuters or the AP is instantly picked up worldwide by millions. You can see that just at the short time at 12:07 when this was posted, there were already more than 3,000 retweets and shares of this information. Now, the AP was very quick. This is not the earliest posting, which looks to be about an hour and a half later, but they did shut down, Twitter shut down the access to the primary AP account, and through their style book account, they did post that their account had been suspended after it was hacked. The tweet about the attack on the White House was false. Mike Baker then posted that the hack came less than an hour after some of them in the office had received an impressively disguised phishing email. So we have another caution now to your employees, and we're not talking about small organizations, significantly large organizations. And this is the warning that immediately the AP sent out to their people. They said some users were receiving emails that appear to have a link to a Reuters or Washington Post news story. The email is a phishing attempt. They tried to warn their folks, but for those of you on the call that are in control of that part of your house, we know how difficult it is to say to employees, don't click unknown links. Mouse over the link and look at the URL. If it's something that looks suspicious in any way, don't open it, don't do anything with it, but alert your IT security people that something is going on. And it did look like a valid URL. The URL was masked as WashingtonPost.com. And maybe a lot of you on the call have recently received something, a phishing email from LinkedIn. I have seen, I had some images of it here, and then because of time took them out. But I will say, if you see anything come in your inbox that says so-and-so would like to talk to you, would like to chat with you, would like to connect with you on LinkedIn, and it looks very official, it carries the LinkedIn logo, and the URL does say linkedin.com, but if you scroll your mouse over that URL, you will see that it points to a site that has nothing to do with LinkedIn. So again, we're training, make sure you're training your people and you're cautioning them on all of the risks to your organization, but more important, the risk to real people, people's lives, when misinformation goes out. We're going to circle all the way back around to this story at the end of our presentation. But the biggest impact that we've seen is yesterday the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged by more than 140 points. There was a quote I found. It said, and there it is, after years of hacks that typically involve little more than obscene language, Twitter's subpar security measures have now caused serious real-world consequences. I contend that there have been many real-world significant consequences. We're going to look at some of those. We're going to start with Lone Star State. Many of you may remember that in January of 2013, sadly, Lone Star State had a shooting incident on their campus. They learned from that, sadly. And just recently, Lone Star College had a terrible attack on their students in a building by a student with an X-Acto knife. He slashed and injured many. Lone Star was great about their communication about this. They communicated via text, they communicated via their website, and they communicated via social media. They used a hashtag that identified they were Lone Star College. This is their official account, and they kept people updated as to what was going on. However, during this time, students on the campus who knew there was an evolving, dangerous situation, who were not told to stand down. They were told to shelter in place and were not given any other direction, began sharing social media, via social media, images of injured, images of video of the injured. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Vine, Vine is a Twitter product that allows you to do mini videos of very short duration and post them to your Twitter feed and elsewhere. And of course, Instagram, we know, is for posting images. But I want you to have a conversation with your employees and say, if you were in this situation, if something were to happen, and your family was in danger, your family was injured, your family's lives were at risk, would you want those images immediately shared via social media? If not, let's take a step back and think about the safety of those around us. And more than that, there was still a shelter-in-place order going on, and yet not only were images being shared immediately after tackling, and I give great credit to the two students that tackled the alleged suspect, but immediately after tackling him to the ground, they took photographs of him, uploaded it to Instagram. Others were taking images of the injured and contacting via Twitter and elsewhere on social media, not police, not officials, but news organizations, and becoming, again, those little thousands of news desks of one where everybody wants to be the one who's mentioned in a news report. As a matter of fact, I watched on one account where one young woman reached out and was reached out to. It was a combination to news organizations. CNN got a hold of her, and while I was simultaneously watching television for news feeds, she appeared on the news feed. This was in minutes of the incident happening. We still don't know if there's another attacker on the campus. There has been no stand-down order. It was, again, new learnings for all of us in the use of social media in a crisis situation. And here was the Instagram photo that that one of the young men took. Additionally, here's a image of a user-generated image that was sent to a news organization, and that news organization coming back and saying, you know, here's a photo from the stabbing scene. Tweet us your photos or email them to us. So we've got this wild west of social media use. Think about it, whether you're on a campus, whether you're in a bank, whether you're a hospital, whether you make widgets at your manufacturing facility. This is not the behavior that we want to see from people during a crisis situation, especially one that is shelter in place. We're going to look at University of Rhode Island very quickly. University of Rhode Island had a scare. I'm very thankful, as are, I'm sure we all, that this was not a threat that turned out to be anything. But they were great. They were very quick to notify people via text message that there was a possible active shooter on campus, and they had a shelter-in-place order immediately. Immediately upon issuing that shelter-in-place order, I saw a couple of things happen. The first was someone in a building who's sheltering in place takes a photograph outside of their window of students who did not want to be locked down all day, depending on the duration of the situation, mass exiting a door in the library where they had been. So rather than shelter in place, we immediately see students leaving and gathering in a central spot in a parking lot. So we've got two things going on here. We have people who are directly violating a shelter-in-place order during a dangerous situation, and we have someone else taking their picture and saying, hey, if there are any bad guys out there using social media during this situation, here's a place that you could go and create a great deal of mayhem. The irresponsibility of both the actions here is a bit mind-blowing. We need to work with employees, students, constituents, vendors, who's ever on our building, campus, or a location. Let's talk about what shelter in place means and not put ourselves and others at risk. And then talk about let's be responsible with social media use. If I see a group of people who may be in danger, the last thing that I'm going to do is share that information publicly. This example was something that I'm still upset about. This is a local news organization in Rhode Island who thought it was a really great idea to use a tool that's out there publicly for anyone to use to create a map, a Twitter map, of all of the tweets that were coming off of the campus at the University of Rhode Island during the crisis situation. There was the University of Rhode Island's own Twitter feed was working frantically to tell people that the shelter-in-place had not been lifted. They were still in lockdown. And this news organization decided to post a Twitter map of specific feeds and locations with people's names and information during the active situation. I felt it was incredibly irresponsible, and I was not alone. Directly underneath the story in this picture on the news organization, many people started posting, this is irresponsible, take this down, prosecute these people for putting this Twitter map up. I commented myself that there was we didn't know if there were, what was going on. It was an active shooter, and it wasn't news. There was no reason to post this. And one specific person happened to be downtown near the offices of this news organization and actually went by the news organization and asked them to take the page down, to which the news organization refused. When you signed up for this webinar, we said we were going to talk about some other things, Ford Figo and some other gazops and hacks that we had seen, and we'll talk about that at a later time because of the significant events that happened last week, both in Boston and at the West Fertilizer plant. Social media now affects every part of our lives. Even those of you who don't use social media are affected by other people's use of social media. Social media instantly broadcast images of the injured, images that were unedited and raw, and we saw people in pain and dire situations. Additionally, now that we know who the accused are of this crime, we can go back and we can look at their social media history. Immediately after, immediately before, and it impacts all parts of our lives, especially in a crisis event. I give great kudos to the Boston Police Department, whomever are the voices behind the Boston Police Department's Twitter account. They did a superior job of delivering timely, important, life-saving information, not just via their Twitter account, via multiple social media avenues. And they did a simply superior job of letting people know how to keep others safe, specifically asking to not compromise officer safety by broadcasting tactical positions of homes being searched. Don't broadcast names, positions, images, addresses, street addresses, etc. And it wasn't just to the media, even though it says media alert. That means anyone. Let's not be putting officers' lives at danger. And we're back to Matt Keyes again. Mr. Keyes was criticized for publishing scanner information directly to his Twitter account. And scanner information, especially for those of you that are law enforcement professionals know, there's a lot of conversation that goes back and forth on the scanner. And some of it is fact, some of it is theory. You're discussing with your fellow officers certain approaches, information that you know up to date at this time, but none of it's confirmed. And if that information is widely shared, it can certainly put officers and citizens' lives at risk. Mr. Keyes was, and others, he's not alone in this, but since we were talking about him, we might as well come back to him, were directly tweeting and sharing direct scanner traffic information that had been confirmed and that was, quite frankly, dangerous to share. But Mr. Keyes says that the Boston Police Department never put out a press release. I'm sorry, they were a little busy at the time. Nor did they publish a tweet asking people not to publish information heard over emergency scanner traffic. Well, yeah, I guess they didn't say in this tweet specifically a scanner traffic, but again, we're back to how mature is the voice of your organization. And is it all about them, or is it all about what you really want messaging to be about? Your company, your brand, your people, and their safety during a crisis situation. This is not a professional. This is just a young person who looked out her back window during the shelter-in-place order. By the way, shelter-in-place, once again, tell all your employees, it does not, when you hear the word shelter-in-place, it does not mean run to your window with your smartphone and take video of what's going on in your backyard. It means get to a safe place, protect yourself and your family. But this person published these photos that, for anyone who maybe knew the area, are very recognizable, and broadcast these officers' positions, putting these officers at risk, and herself. This image was picked up by almost every major news organization. They reached out and contacted her. Other people posted the information, leaving off her name, and she was very quick to find them and tweet out to them that she was the owner of this image. Why was it more important to own that image and to contact and get it posted out to media sites than staying safe? I'm not quite sure I get that right now. Additionally, I keep saying additionally because there's more and more that was happening during all of these events. There was information that was shared via one of the sites we're going to look at in a moment that said that two suspects had been or were in the process of being arrested, or that a suspect had been on the 17th. And the FBI was forced to, not forced, but was compelled then to put out an announcement on its own website that said, contrary to widespread reporting, no arrest had been made in connection with the Boston Marathon attack. And they asked the media and others to use caution and to tweet responsibly before putting any information out. We've never seen that before. During this whole period of time, crowdsourcing investigators started to come out. Many sites were dedicated, created, or leveraged to crowdsource this investigation. And legions of web sleuths then cast suspicion on at least 4 innocent people. They spread bad tips and heightened the sense of panic and paranoia that was already there. Reddit is a site that has come under a lot of scrutiny and criticism during this time. Now, there were 2 different threads going on Reddit. One was a group that quite often follows police scanners on breaking stories and publishes information. And another was just for the sole purpose of uploading images and crowdsourcing who we might think the bombers are. Not trained investigators, just people who thought, you know, these guys look suspicious. And that information's important. And the FBI said, if you have any videos, anything, no matter how small, let us see it. Because they have trained forensic and digital investigators who understand how to analyze this information without publishing and making false assumptions. But I used this specific screenshot because this specific screenshot shows the scanner traffic. We're not following just one scanner. There were links to multiple scanners, and the information was being shared on Reddit. Now, Reddit users did follow the request to not post specific information, people's names, etc. Meanwhile, the people, again, are filming shootouts and other information coming straight from their windows. Sunil Tripathi was one of the people on 4chan who was named as a suspect. This is a young man who's been missing for 3 months. His family is desperately searching for him. And because he had some similarity, as we can see in the bottom images, to the FBI's suspect, he was immediately sourced, searched, located, and named by users as a suspect. I did a search via our monitoring tool, UberView, within an exceptionally short period of time over the weekend. Almost 800,000 mentions of this person's name who had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with this situation. Reddit users did apologize. But during this whole incident, I wonder if we're not forgetting about the 282 wounded and the 4 lives that were lost, and why it's become more about the sensationalism of the moment and everybody's moments of fame than it has become about allowing our police officers and law enforcement officials to do their job, do it well, and keep themselves and citizens safe. If you're interested in donating, by the way, to the Fund for Boston Families Affected by the Incident, you can go to onefundboston.org and learn more. So what's the business impact? What are we talking about all of this? According to an altimeter study, advanced companies still lack key processes, measurements, and standardized tool sets to manage social media. So we're going to give you a few things that I want you to talk about with your employees today. Start today. Just start getting it done. First, prepare message maps in advance. If you've already done that in your crisis management program and your plans, do it for social media, because you have to keep in mind that different tools have different messaging formats. What works on Facebook doesn't necessarily work on Twitter. Have your key message, have 3 key messages, and define who the audiences are for those messages. Remember to use hashtags for the situation or incident as it arises. The media then, if you want official information from your official account to get picked up, media is more likely to use the hashtag that you start off with than if you allow the user community to create the hashtag for you. Lone Star College did a good job of using their hashtag. University of Rhode Island did not. So a lot of information, official information that came out of the University of Rhode Island during their incident was not picked up by all of the users and official users, AP and Reuters, that were searching Twitter for related information because they had not been using an official hashtag. If you don't know what a hashtag is, contact me. If you're going to point users to your official website, which you should do for information, make sure you've done load testing prior to. In every situation where there has been a critical incident, where there's been a crisis or an event at a business or on a college campus, that website has crashed. And without load testing, you can post all the messages you want to on a website, but if it's crashed, it's not going to do anybody any good. please make sure that you talk to your employees, and in your own organization, start by patterning excellence in information sharing. How you don't share sensitive images of victims or others in an active crisis, but do encourage sharing of that information with police and officials in a secure and private manner as appropriate. And the only way that you can do that is to talk with those organizations today. Partner with your local police, EMS, firefighters, etc., and say, in a crisis situation, how should we deliver information? How should we share information with your organization? If the only communication we have with you is through Twitter, how can we make sure this information gets through to you? The awareness of issues and training of your employees, students, families are key in contributing to the effectiveness of using merged media in a crisis situation. Please remember that shelter in place means shelter in place. This image is of someone's office chair with a bullet hole going through it and a bullet hole behind it from the shootout in Boston that occurred. This person has many other images where they were videotaping that shootout. It's a frightening image, and I want you to think about this image. Shelter in place means get to a safe, secure place where you're out of the way of gunfire and other threats. As always, at Firestorm, we ask you to follow a predict, plan, perform approach to building any kind of a comprehensive crisis response or management program. Because the bottom line of this, for those of you on the call that are businesses, is how is this going to affect? How does a crisis event like this affect a business? This is the Charles Mark Hotel. The Charles Mark Hotel is currently figuring six-figure losses, and that is a low estimate. We're going to see that number go up because they were at ground zero of the Boston bombing. As a matter of fact, it's alleged that one of the pieces of one of the pressure cooker bombs landed on their roof. All of the surrounding businesses are closed. This is an active investigation scene still. How does the Charles Mark Hotel and the businesses surrounding it, how do they recoup their losses? How do they pay their employees? What do those employees do? How do they care for their employees afterward who may be afraid to come back to work, who may be unable to continue on as they did before? I'm going to tell you, we have some information for you at the end of this session I'll point you to that can help you when it comes to having those conversations with your employees if you and your environment are in the midst of a crisis event. Remember, too, that after a crisis such as this, gas lines, electrical wiring have to be checked for damage. Structural damage has to be assessed. The area has to be monitored for any other environmental hazards that may have come from the event. Now, as many as 70% of businesses in urban areas now have the opportunity to have terrorism insurance. Do you know if you do? Many times it's built into the lease. If you are leasing your property, find out if you do and understand what that includes. Here's a quote from the National Center for Risk and Economic Analysis of Terrorism Events. The indirect national economic cost of terrorist events, such as those in Boston, can be 3 to 7 times greater than the direct cost. So we have a lot of things to consider, and again, that's why we're here. If you do one thing today other than create those message maps, I want you to sit down with your employees and ask them one question. Can you yell falsely fire in a crowded Twitterverse? See what they say. And open the conversation. Have that conversation about one of the most important principles about communication. Make sure you have a strong crisis management plan, as always, in place. This is a rather complicated graphic, but when you break it down, it's a very basic step-by-step process we want to take you through. Start with employee readiness. Make sure you have plan readiness. Make sure you've trained on your plan. Do simulation and test exercises. Bring us in. We'll do a tabletop exercise, and we'll really test to see where the holes are, because you can't afford to risk people and property at a time that a crisis event is occurring. Make sure your vendors are ready. Make sure you understand what your incident response team is to do, and are they ready at the onset of a crisis. You must monitor all through your processes. Monitor not just on the ground and at your physical location. We want you monitoring social media as well. And we don't want you monitoring social media because we think, gee, it's a good idea. We want you doing it because FINRA, the SEC, other organizations such as FFE, IEC are saying you must monitor social media as part and parcel of any communication program, or you're going to be subject to fines and noncompliance. There is an expectation of a management of risks, and social media is a risk that must be managed. Specifically for financial institutions, they must manage potential risk associated with social media use and access. Well, if financial institutions that are tightly regulated are coming out with these very clear regulations, rules, and guidelines on social media risk, follow those. Whether you sell books or you sell widgets, it makes sense to follow the best of class standards. And we can discuss with you how best to go about creating world-class monitoring, world-class reporting as required by law for many organizations in order to protect yourself, your employees, your product, and your brand as best we can. You must monitor and manage risk of harm to consumers, operating risks like your social account takeovers, the due diligence on those accounts, oversight of those accounts, control. Reputation risk is the onus of your organization to take care of. Fraud, brand identity. Will there be repercussions to the AP for creating a 140-point drop in the Dow? I don't know. It depends on how that hack happened. Third-party contractors, consumer complaints, employee use, all of these things must be managed as part of a mature program. And you must have a mature voice or voices managing that program. You may be lucky to find a 26-year-old wonder kid who brings 150,000 followers with them, but how mature are they in handling the day-to-day professional business obligations of your business? Your social media risk program must have a governance structure. You must have clear policies and procedures that are not broad. They must be very specific to your culture, your organization, your industry, and the rules and regulations along with that. You must have third-party contractor due diligence in this regard as well. You must provide guidance and training to your employees, and that is not just handing them a manual, again, with a broad policy. That's continual training, tabletop exercises, real-world exercises, so that you really understand how your employees and your organization reacts during a crisis. There must be oversight for monitoring, including negative comments and your employees. As I've mentioned, we utilize UberView as our application of choice because it is extremely broad in the platforms that we can monitor, the news feeds that we can monitor as well, and it's highly customizable. It gives us instant alerts. If you'd like to see it, contact me. Your audit compliance, how do you know? Are you sure? Who's managing these processes? The reporting to your board or senior management is a requirement of a social media, a mature social media risk program, and there has to be periodic review and improvement because the landscape changes every day, every minute. To close, sit down with your teams. Ask some of these key questions. Get started on your message mapping. That alone will start the conversation. And think, what are the metrics that you're using to assure that not only your social communication team, but your entire organization would be ready in a crisis? How do you test it? How will you know? And are you absolutely sure? What next? Firestorm has put together a compilation from our CEO, Harry Rulin, our president, Jim Satterfield, some of our senior expert council members, Rocky Delmonico, who's a former Secret Service and head of security for Georgetown University and a bomb expert, many others, Anselm Cartier, who is the former employee and customer care after a crisis representative for a major airline. Everyone has contributed to a document on your personal safety, assuring your personal safety in a crisis event. It's a compilation of essays and then very practical, real-world advice that you can use with your own families, so that if you're attending a large event, you know how to find your children know how to find you afterward. The same thing applies for your employees, on your campus of your organization, in your office building where you lease space. There's a lot of good information. It is on our website now for download. You can access it very easily by going to firestorm.com, clicking the breaking news headline sort of at the very top of the page. That'll open a little drop-down with a link right to the white paper. It's also located on the right-hand side menus of our website on every page under our white papers. Additionally, there was a tragic event during the events that happened in Boston that we talk about as well in that paper, and that was the terrible tragedy in West Texas. When the fertilizer plant exploded. And we have information as well on keeping safe in a crisis event such as that. But our contributing editor to Firestorm's blog, the brilliant Marche Butler, did a great interview with one of our experts, Annie Turgeon, and there's a blog article about that would be great for you to read as well. And you can get right to that by just going to our blog. It's one of the two most recent blog posts on our website. And last, contact us. Reach out. My email is kmasulo@firestorm.com. If you have a question, just email me, ask me. Maybe it'll become a blog post. Maybe we'll end up talking about it together. Maybe it'll be a future webinar. But if you have questions, other people have questions, we'd like to answer them. We'd like to help you keep your organization, your employees, your people, and your property safe. So if you'd like a presentation like this customized for your group, please reach out to us. Go to our website at firestorm.com and talk to your employees, your family, everybody today about how you can utilize social media in your organization in a more mature way, and how you can monitor and make sure the people that are speaking for your company, your brand, and your voice are up to the task to do it. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Bill, I'll turn it back over to you, and thanks so much.